Chapter 19. The First of Many. Tom and Rafa walk into the classroom just seconds before Teacher Root, which is very lucky. Otherwise, a torturous lesson would be awaiting them. Mandy was already in the room. She tries not to watch the boys go to their seats, but without much success. She's stuck up, there's nothing to be done about that, and Tom has been acting way too strange this past week. Her nerves of curiosity are as fired up as those telling her to stay away. Teacher Root starts giving out the day's assignment. They must paint a self-portrait without using any kind of mirror or personal image. The focus of the class is not to make a painting that's a slice of reality, but rather an image of how they see themselves. After the instructions, everyone starts getting ready. Rafa seems lost. For the redhead, it's already hard to do something even when the instructions are clear. But painting an interpretation of how he sees himself is way too complicated. So he goes for the basics. He'll paint a red-haired guy and hope it looks close enough. Thomas doesn't waste time thinking. He starts sketching automatically while pondering what to do to get rid of Lalabi and the Shantanin, which is still a threat. Amid the class's sketches, Root starts speaking. Think about how you imagine yourselves, how you are. But apart from the image you see reflected in the mirror, this is an opportunity to put on paper who Dennis really is, who Laura is, who Raphael is. She points at the students as she says their names. Then she stands up and begins walking slowly around the classroom. She no longer has the same energy she did 20 years ago. Mandy draws well, but it's not something she practices much. At home, after doing her schoolwork, she sometimes spends her time drawing in the back of her notebook. Even though a self-portrait is a challenge, she's doing well. She chose to draw in black and white, which enhances the contrast between her light skin and her black hair. Root, seeing how the girl's work is going, gives her a nod and a quiet excellent, which in her case means a lot. Poor Rafa isn't so lucky, receiving only a disapproving glance from the teacher. The boy does exactly what she wanted the class to avoid. Tom doesn't even realize what he's painting until Root stops next to his canvas and starts questioning him. Any special reason why you see yourself like this? Tomas looks at her a bit confused. She pulled his thoughts away from Zara and back to reality too quickly. Well, he really looks at the canvas for the first time. Clearly, he's painting a self-portrait. The parts he's drawn correspond to his features, but the colours are completely wrong. Not like a clumsy mistake or poor shading. The boy painted his skin dark green and his eyes an intense red. Maybe 'cause I don't feel grown up enough, he answers awkwardly, staring at this monstrosity that is his portrait. That lame response is all he can come up with. It could have been something less literal, she sighs, disappointed. You can continue. Some classmates turn to look at what he made when the teacher questions him. For some reason, they all find it funny. The situation, the drawing, maybe because he painted himself looking like Shrek. Tom doesn't understand how those colours ended up on his canvas. A mistake was made, and now most of the class is quietly laughing at him. Even Rafa, who laughs the hardest. Tomas tries to complain to his friend, but the redhead mimics Shrek's ears with his hands while teasing him. So he gives up. There's no point. The rest of the class passes by quietly. Tom can't fix the colour mistake, so he tries to compensate with the setting, painting a dark dungeon. Rafa does what he can, but it doesn't turn out well. Meanwhile, Mandy creates a self-portrait as beautiful as she is, and many of her admirers are already thinking about how to steal it from the teacher's room later. The bell signalling the end of class rings on time, but the students feel like it must be at least an hour late. They all rush out of the classroom, eager for the freedom they'll have until the next day. Tom and Rafa don't leave the room. They wait by the door for Suzy. She should be coming down the stairs soon. That way, they'll leave together and decide what to do. Their friend doesn't take long. She quickly comes down the stairs, grabs Tom by one arm, Rafa by the other, and they walk down the hallway together. Mandy had gone up to meet April, and the two return together when they see the three walking arm in arm down the hallway. But then, in the blink of an eye, they no longer see them. The trio vanished. They aren't anywhere. The cousins look at each other, astonished. There's no way they could have entered any classroom or hidden behind the lockers. Just like Dracula, they turned into smoke. Tom, Rafa and Suzy walk down the school's front steps in sync, chatting nonsense about their classes. In the middle of their laughter, Tomas notices the silence. Where's the soothing sound of the fountain, the laughter of the elementary kids, and the goodbyes from their classmates? They're alone there. No other students nearby. The boy's heart starts beating faster. He immediately lets go of his friend's arm and starts looking for the Shanton Inn. The group had been led to the street with the mansions, but his intuition tells him this is one of the creature's tricks. Rafa, seeing Tom's movements, realizes the danger. He hears footsteps coming from the hallway right behind them. Reflexively, or maybe out of curiosity, he turns to look and sees the feline creature with its anthropomorphic face approaching, a demonic smile stamped across it. The beast fills the entire hallway. The redhead hadn't yet faced the monster in person. He only knew the description Tom had given. But even with that notion, upon witnessing the reality, he freezes. The Shantanin's large tail ends in several black hands that violently detach with every movement, then dissolve into a black smoke that devours all light around it. These grotesque hands grab the room's furniture before disappearing, knocking them over and smashing them in the worst act of vandalism that school has ever seen. It's up to you to consider whether this act is intentional or not, but the consequence is clear. That passage can't easily be used if the group decides to flee back into the building. Suzy doesn't make the same mistake of looking back, even with the crashing sounds of the furniture being destroyed. Seeing Rafa's reaction, she just pulls him toward the lawn as fast as her almost sedentary body allows. Tom throws his backpack to her, landing beside her. At the end of one of Zara's notebooks, there's a spell. Read it to me. I need to know exactly what to do. Rafa collapses fully onto the ground as Suzy starts running to grab the backpack. The beast is almost out of the hallway. It's in no hurry. It doesn't see them as a threat. Its attitude shows that this time, they won't escape. Thomas tries to establish a connection with the Shanton Inn, like he did in their last encounter. He'll attempt the same technique to stun it for a while. If it works, it'll be easier to understand his friend's instructions. The creature stops advancing as it notices his intention. No matter how much Tom concentrates, the connection isn't established. He feels the failure the moment the Shanton Inn starts laughing at his vain effort. The sound of the laughter is terrifying, bizarre beyond words. It exhales in short bursts, making a sound like a dying person losing their breath. Setting the fun aside, the great feline stays still, a few steps away from the school's exit, staring at the boy with rage in its eyes. Its tail slams hard against the ground, creating a violent crack that echoes through the place. A scream, maybe a roar, accompanies the sound made by the tail. Its many huge, sharp teeth become visible during the roar. The several rows of fangs filling the monster's mouth fill Tom with fear. Suzy sorted through the notebooks with Rafa's help. Now they just need to find the spell. The translator is anything but practical and takes a while to start working. She doesn't have much time. Raphael doesn't want to just stand there, but he also doesn't know what to do in this situation. After all, who plans to face a magical creature hand-to-hand? There's little a normal human can do unarmed against a monster like that, besides all the courage he had vanished when he heard the creature's horrifying scream. The Shanton Inn raises its hindquarters, preparing to pounce. Its gaze is fixed on Tom, ignoring the other two friends. From its half-open mouth, thick drops of saliva fall to the ground with a disgusting sound. If anyone were paying attention. Thomas knows he'll die if he does nothing, and seeing the beast's preparation, he shouts with all his strength, "Grow!" Following his command, the plants nearby in the courtyard surge furiously towards the school's entrance door. The spell's effect is very different from what he did with Temulo. In Zara, the tree followed a set path and struggled, very different from what happens now. The courtyard grass grows instantly. its short roots gripping the concrete floor and the building's bricks, advancing towards the shantanin. Some trees are also affected, their trunks and branches creaking and groaning uncontrollably as they block the passage alongside the grass with a weave of branches, roots, and weeds. The beast jumps backward upon seeing nature's advance. Tom's magic is harmless to the creature. Its dodge was purely instinctive. Rafa lets out a shout of excitement upon seeing all that greenery blocking the school's exit. Suzy watches the magic, her mouth agape. She had ignored Tom's shout, focused on finding the binding ritual, but she can't look away when the trees move. The noise is overwhelming. Irritated by this setback, the shantanine charges against the plants. The green blockade can't stop it completely. Being a flexible structure, it absorbs some of the impact. The monster manages to get through with one of its paws, about the size of a basketball, and its head. Thomas knows the magic won't stop the advance. He needs to do something more. But what? The creature pushes further, its other paw ready to widen the gap in the roots. Soon it'll be free to devour them. The animal's tail slams back into the hallway, venting its rage on everything inside. One of its whips could be lethal. Its hind legs slip on the school's waxed floor, failing to gain traction to help it overcome the barrier. Even so, its weight is enough to force its way through. In the midst of the beast's roars forcing its body through the barrier, Tomas notices the plants starting to die. The vibrant green gives way to a sad brown. Temelo had warned him, plants that grow quickly can't stay alive for long. Not letting this opportunity pass, the boy starts to concentrate. He pulls from memory the same energy manipulation he used in his failed book experiment. With his arms pointed at the monster, he controls the energy flow through his body and channels it into the dying plants at the door. The shantanin stops writhing when the boy starts the process. Tom begins to smell like food, exactly what the beast seeks. Drops of blood drip from Tomas's hands, staining the concrete floor that connects the school entrance to the sidewalk. Moments later, the first green spark ignites a wild flame that spreads across the plant barrier so quickly that the almost free creature can't react. The shantanin thrashes, forcing its way, but can't do anything before its paw, face, and torso are engulfed by flames. A success, but Tomas is also catching fire. Screaming in pain, the feline monster breaks through the barrier consumed by the flames, which spread into the courtyard. Tom, so focused on his target, doesn't realize that the sleeves of his shirt are burning. Rafa, who watches everything from a bit farther away, dashes toward his friend, arriving just as the flames spread to Tom's chest. The redhead is really fast. If they needed to flee, he'd be the one to make it out alive. Thomas is startled as Rafa forcefully rips off his burning shirt and throws it to the ground. He stomps frantically to put out the fire, unsuccessfully. Such is the haste of the act that Tomas collapses to his knees, his arms dripping blood with multiple burn marks. Raphael abandons the scorched shirt when he hears the shantanin leaping out of the building. The flaming monster stops close to the two, its burnt face expressing pure hatred. At that moment, Suzy shouts, "Found it!" excited about finding it. The girl's voice hits Tom like an angelic song, giving him strength to keep going. Even with the hope that they can win, he starts to feel his arms ache. And it's only going to get worse. Suzy reads the first verse of the spell. Upon hearing the start of the ritual, the beast shifts its focus to the girl. It clearly senses that what she's doing is more dangerous than any trick Tom had shown. Rafa also notices the change in the shantanin's attitude, unlike his friend who isn't paying full attention to the creature. Without letting the beast charge at Suzy, Rafa grabs the shirt still burning with green flames and lunges at the shantanin. The animal is completely caught off guard. Until the impact of the flames, it didn't even see Raphael as a threat. But the magical fire burns fiercely. Even while burning his hands, the redhead keeps the flames pressed against the monster as long as possible. Amid the monster's screams of pain, Rafa is flung far away by the beast's out-of-control tail, which strikes him with a blow to the chest, sending blood spraying through the air. Several of the black hands extending from the tail try to grab the redhead so he'd be hit more times, but they miss by inches. Rafa rolls several meters across the ground, leaving a trail of blood, ending up unconscious near one of the benches in the courtyard. Suzy is shocked to see her friend get hit, so much so that she can't continue reading, and Tom also panics, but he needs to hear everything that must be recited. "Suzy, keep going!" he shouts at his friend. The chantonin still burns, screams and rolls on the ground, but it won't stay like that for long, and she'll be in danger. "Okay," she responds with a trembling voice. Tsukimoto struggles to read the text. The notebook shakes too much. She's terrified. Even so, she takes a deep breath and manages to read the spell completely. Tom memorizes every word but knows there must be other instructions. He needs more time. "What else?" he yells, preparing to launch another spell. "Now it's a bit confusing. You need to envelop the chosen being using what comes from within?" "I don't understand," she replies, tears streaming down her face. The beast finally extinguishes the fire on its fur and roars loudly, ready to charge at Suzy. Thomas didn't feel any anger when the creature first attacked him, only fear and the will to survive. But seeing the creature targeting his friends fills him with fury. Taking advantage of the little time Rafa bought at great cost, he prepares to give his best. Once again the young mage commands, "Grow and grab him!" The two trees closest to the chantonin start trembling as if alive. They lunge with their branches, grabbing and wrapping around the magical demon. Incidentally, one of the trees participating in the assault is the same one where Tom was kicked by Mandy exactly a week ago. For that reason, it feels privileged to help. Too bad no one notices that detail at the moment. "I don't know. That's what it says. You must envelop with what comes from inside the target. If he accepts, little effort will be needed," Suzy says, crying to Tom, who tries to immobilize the magical creature. The chantonin breaks free. The branches barely delay it, buying mere seconds, allowing Suzy to finish explaining the spell. She may not have understood the instruction, but Tom did. It becomes clear to him that he must subjugate the monster's will with his own amandla. In other words, the spell isn't a foolproof solution. It depends on who performs it and the target's resistance to submitting. With no time and no choice, he begins closing himself off from external energy and focuses on the flow of grace running within his body. This time, he has no trouble feeling the amandla flowing, even in the chaos of combat. The same funny pleasure is moderately felt. There's something else, like a blanket draped over his shoulders. He doesn't know what it is, but feels it helping. He is indeed being embraced at that moment, but not by what he imagined. Tomas doesn't know how to subjugate the chantonin with his energy, so he imagines his amandla wrapping around the beast, just as the branches did, squeezing tighter and tighter. While concentrating on this image, he begins to chant the spell. "You who crawl as I walk, who weep amid the sorrow." Right with the first verse, the boy feels something very different from other spells he's cast, a presence that is expected. The chantonin starts showing signs of fear, becoming even more desperate to escape from the branches and the amandla that seems to physically trap it in place. Deprived of the grace given, lost in the darkness of deceit. Everything around the beast darkens. The world in that moment is swallowed by the nothing. From the darkness, two pairs of arms emerge, wrapping around the terrified creature. They belong to the Zaririan people, adorned with tattoos and bracelets made of leather and parts of unknown animals. Each hand presses against the ground, forming a square around the chantonin. They are enormous. "Zenel shall provide you with a gift, once the tribute is claimed." Tom finishes the spell, pouring all his energy onto the beast. An oval-shaped mouth with sharp, protruding teeth quickly descends from the void and swallows the entire chantonin in a single bite. At the same moment, Tom vomits up everything he's eaten, along with blood that starts flowing from his eyes, nose, and ears. Without strength, he collapses face first onto the ground. The light consumed by the spell returns. Daylight gives way to the night sky, birds start singing again, and the suburban sounds return to being heard. Suzy stands up and runs to Rafa, unconscious next to one of the many benches in the courtyard. Without moving his bloodied body, she tries to wake him up. Little by little, the boy comes to. Ah, what a mess. He groans in pain, placing a hand over his stomach where he was hit. His condition is terrible, but it doesn't seem grave. The cut wasn't deep. It's the impact that worries her. How long was I out? He looks at the streetlights turned on. Not long, Suzy answers, relieved. He seemed okay, or as okay as someone who fought a demon can be. Can you sit here? I'll check on Tom. She looks back. Before, she hadn't noticed the amount of blood around him. The sight makes her heart sink. Yeah, I can go. Rafa positions himself on the bench in a way that doesn't hurt as much, only when he breathes. Suzy runs to Tomas. As she approaches, she realizes how much the battle harmed him, even without being directly attacked. He's utterly destroyed. His arms are still bleeding a bit, in addition to bearing the burns he suffered. Tom's face is a large red blotch, completely stained with the blood that flowed and was vomited. His whole body is covered in small cuts, especially his hands. In this state, it's no surprise he fainted. If the fight had lasted longer, he would have died from sheer exertion. The school remains intact, with no signs of the conflict nor of the Chantonin. The spell dispatched it as it should. Suzy pulls out her cell phone to call for help. The two need urgent medical attention. However, she hesitates. How will she explain what happened to the authorities? Maybe it's better to feign madness and not explain anything. Rafa could perhaps say he was hit by something or that he fell, but Tom's condition is way too bizarre. In the end, she decides that it's more important for them to be okay and makes the call.